another print disability, which makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org.
Hello, this is P. Fitz, and for the next hour, I'll be reading from current issues of the Lockport Union-Sun Journal on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Searching for a cause. Fire coordinator says lack of water not an issue in battling Gordy Harper's blaze. Newfane, Niagara County fire investigators continued picking through a rubble of the former Gordy Harper's Bazaar Tuesday, looking for a cause for the raging blaze that turned the beloved Newfane landmark into a pile of smoldering wood. Niagara County Fire Coordinator Jonathan Schultz said he had no update on the cause of the fire late Tuesday afternoon. I know they've been looking at it today, Schultz said, of the fire investigators' efforts. Schultz also said in a request for 5 water tankers to respond to the fire was not an indication that volunteer firefighters were encountering issues with water pressure or availability during the fire late Saturday night, early Sunday morning. There was a lot of equipment there, including 3 ladder trucks, Schultz said, so they asked for extra water. Tanker trucks from the Barker, Walcottsville, Terry's Corners, Sanborn, and Lewiston No. 2 fire companies were requested and responded. Schultz said water was also drafted by the firefighters from nearby 18 Mile Creek. Calls to the Miller Hose Company, the primary fire company battling the blaze, seeking additional information about the fire, were not answered or returned. Volunteers from Wright's Corners and South Wilson fire companies were also involved in fighting the fire. It reportedly took 4 hours to bring the flames under control. Schultz said there was no connection between the tanker truck requests at Harper Fire and a blaze in Ransomville 2 weeks ago when firefighters experienced difficulty accessing fire hydrants that had been buried in snow. Fire broke out at 10:45 p.m. Saturday. It was not immediately clear where in the wood frame structure at 3333 Lockport Alcott Road the fire may have started. Nancy Smith, who with her partner Timothy Williams Jr. said they had been working on renovations at the landmark location almost every night for the past 3 months, said she had been told that the fire likely started somewhere near the bar, an area where no renovation had occurred other than the removal of a couple of walls. Addressing speculation about the cause on Monday, she said, "I want our community to know this fire was not set. It was an old building. The cause is undetermined because there's nothing left." The beloved Bazaar bakery and restaurant had been expected to reopen as soon as sports bar and grill under new ownership. Smith said she and Williams did a walkthrough of the property on Sunday and found nothing salvageable. The original business was sold by Gordy Harper in 2023 and was operated as N.U. Gordy Harper's for less than a year. In 2024, Mom's Place restaurant was launched, but it closed less than a week. Save the Michaels CEO calls out state officials. Jessica Goff says they acted in bad faith before pulling funding. The top executive of Save the Michaels of the World, Incorporated, defended her organization's record of success on Tuesday, while suggesting local and state officials failed to negotiate in good faith before pulling funds used to operate addiction treatment sites in Niagara and Erie counties. In the wake of Monday's closure of the organization's locations in Lockport and Buffalo, Save the Michaels CEO Jessica Goff accused state officials of moving to dismantle her organization without providing meaningful opportunity to demonstrate progress. She outlined her concerns in a letter sent to Governor Kathy Hochul and Dr. Chinazo Cunningham, State Office of Addiction Services and Support Commissioner. Goff, who replaced Save the Michaels founder Avi Israel as the organization's CEO on January 2nd, distributed copies of the letter to local media outlets, including the Niagara Gazette and Lockport Union-Sun Journal newspapers. There has been no fraud. There's been no personal enrichment. There has been no criminal referral because none of it is warranted, Goff wrote in her letter. There has only been a small community-based organization linking individuals to treatment within 24 to 48 hours, answering approximately 55,000 calls annually and serving individuals who do not walk through the doors of a larger system. The people most affected by this decision are not the administration, she said. They are participants, individuals in active addictions, individuals experiencing homelessness, families in crisis. Many of them trust Save the Michaels and will not seek services elsewhere. We have spent years building that trust in Lockport and the surrounding communities. It can be destroyed in a single administrative action. Goff's response comes amid questions about the organization's future following a 2024 audit by OASAS, which distributes public funding for addiction treatment and prevention programs and regulates licensed providers, including Save the Michaels. As was first reported by the newspaper's media partner, Buffalo-based Investigative Post, the state agency's audit identified several areas of concern, including poor oversight of the former CEO Israel's use of the nonprofit's funds, improper tracking of employee hours, and failure to provide financial information to auditors. Investigative Post also reported last week that Erie County's plan was to suspend funding for the organization in light of the audit findings. In her letter, Goff cited numerous changes she said the organization has made in the less than 60 days since she has been in charge, including outsourcing of accounting, strengthening of fiscal controls, reducing staff to bare bones operations, cooperating fully with OASAS, and openly inviting oversight and partnership. Goff also suggested her organization's new leadership has not been given the opportunity by the state to prove the corrective action and stability. Instead, public narratives are being shaped by disgruntled former employees, while the thousands who have been helped remain unheard, she wrote. In her letter, Goff continued her timeline of events, indicating that representatives from Save the Michaels agreed to meet OSAS and Erie County officials last November to directly address concerns and that her organization agreed to cooperate fully with requests to adjust its scope of services the following month. She also noted that Israel stepped down as CEO effective January 1. We responded to the 2024 audit findings, Goff wrote. At no point were we told our corrective actions were insufficient. At no point were we ever warned that we were at risk of losing our contracts or that concerns were that grave. According to Goff, Save the Michaels was informed in January that its scope of services was still under review, and her organization was told for 3 months that its contracts were being processed. We were then told they were with legal, Goff wrote. We were told funding was forthcoming. We operated in good faith on the word of state and county representatives. Then, without resolution of the current audit process and without meaningful dialogue, funding was pulled. Not phased, not conditioned, not placed under oversight, just pulled. Goff described the decision by OSAS and Erie County to pull funding as consequential, while suggesting it will cost lives. She added that her organization was not seeking special treatment, but rather fair treatment from the state. If there are specific deficiencies that remain, identify them clearly, she wrote. If enhanced oversight is required, implement it. If structural safeguards are needed, mandate them. But do not force our hand to close a community-based recovery organization through delay, silence, and procedural withdrawal. I am ready today to meet, to answer questions, to provide documentation, and to work under any reasonable conditions necessary to protect the people we serve, Goff added. The question is whether the state is willing to do the same. Lockport contractors sentenced for scamming customers. Wayne Michalik, who to spend 2 years in prison after pleading to several grand larceny charges. The Lockport owner of Western New York Backyard Enclosures was sentenced to 2 years in prison for scamming several Erie County residents out of thousands of dollars. Wayne Michalik of Lockport, with 53 years old, was sentenced Tuesday before Erie County Court Judge Susan Egan and received a determinate sentence of 2 years in prison. This past November, Michalik pleaded guilty to 3 counts of third-degree grand larceny, Class D felonies, and he entered a guilty plea to all counts in the indictment. Additionally, Michalik was ordered to pay restitution to the victims. To date, he has only paid back money owed to 1 victim. Erie County District Attorney Michael Keene said that on or about April 26th of 2022, Michalik, while working as the owner and operator of Western New York Backyard Enclosures, accepted a down payment for services from a homeowner in the town of Marilla. Michalik, who was hired to build a detached garage on the property, admitted to failing to perform any work after receiving a payment of almost $29,000 from the victim. Also, on or about May 16th of 2022, Michalik accepted a down payment for services from a homeowner in the village of Blaisdell. Michalik, who was hired to install a concrete patio with a pergola on the property, failed to perform any work after receiving a payment of $5,000. Additionally, on or about June 4th of 2022, Michalik accepted a down payment for services from a homeowner in the town of Tonawanda. Mahalik, who was hired to install a concrete patio on the property, failed to perform any work after receiving a payment of almost $6,000 from the victim. Many residents will be hiring contractors as the warm weather approaches, but even the most cautious homeowner can become a victim if the person hired for the job never shows up to perform the work, Keene said. As always, I encourage anyone who has been a victim of a home improvement scam to contact my office. Keene recommended the Erie County Attorney's Office and ECDA confidential criminal investigator Robert Beback for their work in the investigation. The case was prosecuted by Assistant District Attorney Ryan Emmerling and Assistant District Attorney Denise Herman of the Special Investigation and Prosecutions Bureau. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Lockport Union-Sun and Journal on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. New York's Medicaid program is now under federal scrutiny. State officials ordered to provide details on fraud, waste, and abuse. There's a picture of Administrator for Centers for Medicaid and Medicare Services, Dr. Emmett Oz. Speaks at a news conference on efforts to combat fraud in the old Eisenhower Executive Office building on the White House campus, February 25th in Washington. State officials ordered to provide details on fraud, waste, and abuse. President Donald Trump's administration is expanding its crackdown on state Medicaid programs to New York, launching a fraud probe in the state a week after it said it was freezing nearly $260 million in Medicaid funding in Minnesota over similar accusations. Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services Administrator Dr. Emmett Oz announced Tuesday that the Trump administration identified concerning trends in New York's Medicaid program and demand that the state officials provide details about their handling of fraud, waste, and abuse within 30 days of risk-deferred payments. Heart surgeons are trained to look at the numbers. As a former celebrity heart surgeon said in a video on Tuesday. Right now, the numbers coming out of New York Medicaid program don't add up. The new investigation is part of an administration-wide initiative to address fraud around the country, which federal officials say is needed to rein in runaway spending and protect taxpayers. With many midterm voters concerned about affordability, Trump has ramped up those efforts, announcing that Vice President J.D. Vance would help balance the nation's budget by spearheading a national war on fraud. Targeted Democratic state officials have decreed the Republican administration's moves are as politically motivated and potentially disastrous for millions of people who rely on health care safety net for low-income Americans. New York's Democratic governor says the move is politically targeted. In a letter to the New York governor, Kathy Hochul, a Democrat, Oz wrote the state's spending levels combined with serious concerns about the oversight of certain Medicaid services demand immediate investigation, corrective action, and enhanced transparency. The letter flags specific areas of concern, including high proportion of New York Medicaid beneficiaries receiving personal care services related to daily living activities like bathing, grooming, and meal preparation. Excuse me. New York's soaring Medicaid costs have long vexed the state's governors and were top priority for Governor Andrew Cuomo, a Democrat, who grappled for years with the program's spiraling price tag as residents age and receive additional benefits. The state's program, which costs $115.6 billion in 2025, provides health care for about 1 in 3 New Yorkers and spends more per person for care than Medicaid programs in many other states. Hochul has also tried to rein in costs through an overhaul of how home health care program is administered. Asked Wednesday by reporters about Oz's letter, Hochul said the Trump administration is targeting a Democrat-led state for political reasons, but added, I will have to stand up and show them the truth and show them the facts that they're wrong. When there is fraud, I will help them fight it. Hochul's office said the fraud investigation was an attempt by Trump administration to rip health care away from everyday New Yorkers. CMS said in an emailed statement that ensuring states comply with federal rules is a core part of the agency's federal oversight role. New York's investigation follows CMS action in other blue states. New York investigation comes less than a week after CMS halted Medicaid payments to Minnesota over fraud concerns. Oz said the money would be delivered only after Minnesota implements a comprehensive core action plan. The administration had previously cited allegations of fraud involving daycare centers run by Minneapolis area Somali residents as a reason for a massive federal enforcement surge there. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, a Democrat, called the new funding freeze targeted retribution. Minnesota on Monday sued the Trump administration over deferred payments. The state is also appealing CMS withholding $2 billion in annual Medicaid funds announced in early January. Earlier this year, Oz announced that CMS had sent letters to Democratic governors in Maine and California demanding more information or corrective action on alleged fraud in government health programs in those states. In the days after receiving Oz's letter last month, Maine Governor Janet Mills said she wouldn't be intimidated by the administration and called the request a political attack. The 30-day timeline he gave her to respond or risk losing Medicaid payments is set to expire this week. A spokesman for Mills didn't immediately respond to a request for comment. Maine is facing a political attack from a president who uses allegations of fraud as a pretense to send ICE and other weaponized federal agents into states led by Democrats with devastating consequences. The Trump administration has also sought to withhold funding from Democratic-led states at least 2 other times in recent months, citing fraud concerns. It happened with child care subsidies and other social services programs in Minnesota, New York, and 3 other states, and with the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program in 22 states that have declined to hand over data that the federal government says is needed to catch fraud. In both those cases, judges have ruled that the money must continue to flow for now. Trump says deal on data centers will lower electricity prices. Washington. President Donald Trump invited technology companies to the White House on Wednesday to commit to developing their own power generation as he tries to ease tensions over the cost of electricity used by data centers to develop artificial intelligence. They need some PR help because people think that if the data center goes in there, electricity prices are going to go up, Trump said. It's not going to happen. The ratepayer protection pledge touted by the president comes as affordability has become a top concern for American public, wary of the possibility that the AI build-out could lead to higher utility bills. Trump first announced the pledge during the State of the Union address last month, but provided few details. Communities across the nation have seen a backlash against data centers over fears about rising electricity prices and concerns about pollution and water consumption. Opposition to raising power prices was also a key factor in Democratic wins last year in elections in states including Georgia, Virginia, and New Jersey. Trump has sought to deflect public concerns about AI, seeing the fast evolving technology as crucial for the U.S. to attract foreign investment and maintain its economic and military prowess. But it's unclear whether the commitments will meaningfully shield Americans from higher electricity prices that have climbed 6.3% over the past year, according to the Labor Department's Consumer Price Index. The president stressed that he understands that demand for energy will triple by 2035, largely because of AI, meaning that the USC needs to dramatically increase its construction of power plants. Construction spending on power generation jumped in 2022, but it has drifted slightly downward after peaking in October of 2023. According to the Census Bureau, Trump has also sought to cancel wind power projects while elevating coal, which contributes to climate change, as a source of energy. Newfane dealing with sewer discharge into lake. Bypass at Alcott Harbor could be in place as soon as Tuesday. Alcott, the town of Newfane, is working toward a temporary fix for a broken sewer main that's discharging untreated water into Alcott Harbor. The break in a 12-inch pipe forced main from 12-inch forced main from pumping station number 6 occurred about 10 a.m. on Tuesday. That's last Tuesday. The town's engineer and the State Department of Environmental Conservation were notified immediately, Town Supervisor John Syracuse said, and the engineer has been devised a bypass that could be in place as soon as this Tuesday, just the other day. The current rate of wastewater discharge into Lake Ontario is 150 gallons per minute. Potentially affected public areas include fishing area and the boat launch at the town marina. Syracuse said the town is reporting the discharge rate to DEC on a daily basis and working to stop the leakage as soon as possible. A bypass will be utilized until crews are able to access the portion of the sewer main that needs repair. The leak is underground, underneath a parking lot near the pump station at 5848 East Main Street. Cerrone Construction has already identified and dug an area for the bypass, Syracuse said. The town is awaiting on one part that won't be received until Monday. Then installation of the bypass can get underway. There is no way to treat or disinfect the harbor, according to Syracuse, but because the leak is underground, soil is filtering the waste water, and that's coming up. And what's coming up is dirty water, no fecal matter or other solids. These are extremely serious events, and I want to assure the public we are following all the protocols in place, the supervisor said. It's looking like the town will be able to reallocate some unspent ready REDI, that's Resiliency and Economic Development Initiative, grant funding for stabilization of Pump Station 6, Syracuse added. There is a plan to replace Pump Station 6. Unfortunately, it got us before we got it. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Lockport Union-Sun Journal on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. This is from the editorial page out under the Our View column. Election fraud safeguards already in place. There's been much talk and debate on this page regarding the SAVE Act, the Safeguards American Voter Eligibility Act, which would require voters to provide proof of citizenship and photo identification nationwide. It comes amid talk of widespread voter fraud. During the recent State of the Union address, President Trump again brought up the idea that illegal aliens are casting votes in elections across the country. The cheating is rampant in our elections. It's rampant, Trump said. How bad is it in Niagara County? We checked last week with our 2 election commissioners, one representing the Democrats and the other representing Republicans. Neither could cite a single case of voter fraud. Democratic Elections Commissioner Laura Allen, editor's note here, we apologize for leaving out her first name in Saturday's story, and Republican Elections Commissioner Jennifer Sandonato. Both said there are safeguards in place protecting the integrity of elections, and they have proven effective. Allen said in 24 years she doesn't recall a single proven incident of a non-citizen or even a dead person voting in an election in Niagara County. Sandonato said the same thing. Before anyone can vote in the state of New York, they must be registered to vote with the Board of Elections, where they reside. Allen noted that the state's voter registration form includes an affidavit section where applicants are required to swear or affirm, under the threat of penalties for non-compliance, to being citizens of the United States and having lived in the city, county, or village at least 30 days before the election. Violators face fines up to $5,000 and could be put in jail for up to 4 years. If someone went through the process of being registered, they'd have to have a signed affidavit, Allen said. Allen added that absentee ballots have to be requested and once received must be signed by the recipient before they are returned. Those ballot signatures are checked as well, she said. Importantly, she noted no one can obtain an absentee ballot unless they have been registered as a voter in the county. Allen said modern electronic voting machines also serve as a check, as they have 3 methods for monitoring votes. The machines have tapes used to count vote totals, compact flashcards that read ballots entered into the machines, and finally the paper ballots filled out by voters visiting polling sites. Voters do sign their names prior to filling out their ballots, and trained on-site inspectors are required to make sure their signatures match registration records. Allen said all polling locations are required to have both Democratic and Republican inspectors on hand at all times while the polls are open. I think we have good people working the polls, Allen said. I think our system is rock solid. Sandonato said if someone suspects a person of voting illegally, They should bring evidence to the elections board so it can be passed along to the Niagara County District Attorney's Office for further review. While claims of widespread voter fraud may dominate the national political debate, Niagara County officials responsible for running our elections, Democrats and Republicans alike, say otherwise. House narrowly rejects Iran War Powers Resolution. Washington. The House narrowly rejected a resolution Thursday to curb President Donald Trump's powers in the Iran war, an early sign of unease in Congress over the rapidly widening conflict that is reordering U.S. priorities at home and abroad. It's the second vote in as many days after the Senate defeated a similar measure. Lawmakers are confronting the sudden reality of representing wary Americans in wartime and all that entails, with lives lost, dollars spent, and alliances tested by the president's unilateral decision to go to war with Iran. While the tally in the House was 212 to 219, was expected to be tight. The outcome provided a clarifying snapshot of political support for and opposition to the U.S.-Israel military operation and Trump's rationale for bypassing Congress, which alone has the power to declare war. At the Capitol, the conflict has quickly carried echoes of the long wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, and many September 11th era veterans now serve in Congress. Donald Trump is not a king, and if he believes the war with Iran is in our national interest, then he must come to Congress and make the case, said Representative Gregory Meeks, the top Democrat on the House Foreign Affairs Committee. House Speaker Mike Johnson warned that it would be dangerous to limit the president's authority while the U.S. military is already in conflict. We are not at war, said Johnson, a Republican from Louisiana, a close ally of Trump, contradicting others. He said the operation is limited in scope and duration. The mission is nearly accomplished. Trump's Republican Party narrowly controls the House and Senate, largely sees conflict with Iran not as a start of a new war, but the end of a government that was long menaced the West. The operation has killed Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, which some view as an opportunity for regime change, though others warn of chaotic power vacuum. Republican Representative Brian Mast of Florida, chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, publicly thanked Trump for taking action against Iran, saying the president is using his own constitutional authority to defend the United States against the imminent threat the country posed. Mast, an Army veteran who worked as a bomb disposal expert in Afghanistan, said the War Powers Resolution was effectively asking that the president do nothing. For Democrats, Trump's attack on Iran, influenced by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, is a war of choice that is testing the balance of powers in the Constitution. The framers weren't fooling around, said Representative Jamie Raskin, Democrat of Maryland, arguing that the Constitution is clear that only Congress can decide matters of war. It's up to us. Crossover coalitions emerged among those in Congress. 2 Republicans joined most Democrats in voting for the War Powers Resolution, while 4 Democrats joined Republicans to reject it. I think that might be backwards. Anyway, the War Powers Resolution is signed into law. would have immediately halted Trump's ability to conduct the war unless Congress approved the military action. The president would likely veto it. Trump has scrambled to win support for a nearly week-old conflict as Americans of all political persuasions take stock. Administration officials spent hours behind closed doors on Capitol Hill this week trying to reassure lawmakers that they have the situation under control. 6 U.S. military members were killed over the weekend in a drone strike in Kuwait, and Trump has said more Americans could die. Thousands of Americans abroad have scrambled for flights, many lighting up phone lines at congressional offices as they sought help in trying to flee the Middle East. Trump said Thursday he must be involved in choosing Iran's new leader. And Johnson, the House Speaker, said last week that America has enough problems at home and is not about to be in the nation building business. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said that the war could extend 8 weeks, twice as long as the president first estimated. Trump has left open the possibility of sending U.S. troops into what has been largely a bombing campaign. More than 1,230 people in Iran have died. The administration said the goal is to destroy Iran's ballistic missiles that it believes are shielding its nuclear program. It has also said Israel was ready to act, and American bases would face retaliation if the U.S. did not strike Iran first. The U.S. said Wednesday it torpedoed an Iranian warship near Sri Lanka. The administration can't even give us a straight answer as to why we launched this preemptive war, said Representative Massey, the Republican from Kentucky, an outlier in his party. Massey and Representative Hanna, Democrat of California, who had teamed up to force the release of Jeffrey Epstein files and pushed the War Powers Resolution to the floor past objections from Johnson's GOP leadership. Republican Warren Davidson of Ohio, former Army Ranger, also vetoed or voted for it. Democratic reps Henry Cuellar of Texas and Jared Golden of Maine, Greg Landsman of Ohio, and Juan Vargas of California voted against. Congress must stand with the president to finally close once and for all this dark chapter of history, said Representative Michael McCall of Texas. Representative Yasmin Ansari of Arizona said that as the daughter of Iranian immigrants who fled their homeland, she opposes the regime, but it is concerned that democratic transition for the people of Iran never seems a priority for Trump or the officials who briefed Congress. UB researchers to study forever chemicals still showing up in fish. Department of Defense funded project will investigate how fluorotelomers, once thought to be safer PFAS alternatives, penetrate zebrafish cells. Buffalo is a site. Fluorotelomers, some chemical, were introduced as safer version of polyfluoroalkyl substances, PFAS, but recent studies suggest that they may build up in fish, much like the forever chemicals they replaced. Understanding the risks these replacement PFAS pose for aquatic life requires a clearer picture of how they accumulate in fish at the molecular level. Now, scientists from University of Buffalo's Renew Institute will examine how these fluorotelomers latch onto fish cell membranes and interact with the key protein gatekeepers, thanks to a one-year, $250,000 strategic environmental research and development program grant from the U.S. Department of Defense. If you would like to hear the rest of this article, please contact Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 716-821-5555. After the fire, emergency responders, Red Cross guide fire victims toward help. With the Genesee Street apartment building on fire Thursday night, Eastern Niagara County has seen a considerable number of fires this winter that have devastated residents. This has been a tough winter for our fire departments across the county, said Jonathan Schultz, County Fire Coordinator and Director of Emergency Services. With a number of fires across the county, I commend them for what they've done. I think the worst night was a minus 30 degrees in Royalton. The crews did amazing work. All the fires that we've had have been accidental in nature. Schultz said fires this winter in Heartland, Royalton, the town of Lockport, and Newfane are still under investigation, with no shared causes between them. While the fire department battles a blaze, paramedics and other crew attend to the residents. The fire departments are there and offer any and all services they can for the homeowner, Schultz said. We'll work with Niagara County Dispatch and they'll get a hold of the Red Cross. I've seen them come on scene within an hour or two. They're pretty responsive. A majority of the time, the residents will go to the neighbor's house and the fire company will work with them. Volunteers from the American Red Cross Disaster Action Team come from all types of professional backgrounds and assist the fire victims. Ed Pristach of Amherst is a volunteer DAT team supervisor who volunteers for overnight shifts to respond to the fire scenes in Niagara and Erie counties. I've been doing this for nearly 6 years, and the amount of composure and grace that people show in the face of their life getting burnt to the ground in front of them or turned sideways is just amazing, said Pristach, a retired psychology professor. I think I've only had one client yell at me, and she quickly apologized. He said calls come from National Red Cross Dispatch Center that locates the DAT members closest to the emergency. I get details of what is going on, but it's usually sketchy, he said. Pristach said. He then calls another volunteer who works out how to meet at the site and gives the Red Cross duty officer an estimated time of arrival. Depending on arrival time, I'm about an hour and a half away, Pristach said, of his response time. I don't think I've ever pushed the 2-hour envelope. DAT volunteers may respond without knowing the names of the residents. Sometimes the client doesn't even have a cell phone because it's been lost in the fire. The information might be correct or it might not be. At the scene, Pristach said he assesses the property damage before seeing the client to determine if sheltering is needed. If one or two building systems are compromised, Pristach said the residence is not habitable. While a fire department assessment is over $40,000 in damage, puts the scene in the ballpark's major damage, Pristach said. We like to inspect the property, make sure it meets our criteria for financial assistance. I've been involved in some places where there has been emergency demolition because the house was unstable and they are tearing the building down within a matter of minutes. Weather conditions are also weather conditions are also a factor, Pristach said. If it's below 40 degrees and there's no electricity or gas, it's not going to be habitable. If there are children, we're more likely to say it's uninhabitable. The DAT volunteers use a Red Cross phone app to file the case report. Pristach said the Red Cross offers financial aid, disaster health services, and disaster mental health counseling, and a caseworker will be assigned to the family. Pristach said the DAT supervisor can load a client assistance card with funds on the site or transfer funds to a client's account. The money is transferred before we leave, he said. The cards can be used to replace medical equipment, prescriptions, clothing, and other items. Turning to the client, Pristach said, I start with the psychological first aid and how they're dealing with this disaster. They're living through. Some people are numb and do not process information. Do not process the information well. So I have to scale back on what I'm telling them. It would be difficult to process a person who just collapsed emotionally. One of us needs to stay with that person to console them, to hear them cry. Sometimes people do go to the hospital, he said. If that person was in any kind of shape to interact with us, we would go to the emergency room or hospital room to process them. I was at ECMC last week. I've been to DeGraff. The Red Cross volunteers direct their clients to nearby hotels where they may receive discount due to the disaster. I've been known with my team to do a quick survey of close hotels to see if they'll take pets. Pristach said, I try to encourage clients to start thinking about where they're going to live, how they're going to pick up their lives, and how they're going to get their kids to school. So when the caseworker does call, they have some answers, or at least ideas. Bringing the telephone to life. 150 years ago, Alexander Graham Bell's invention changed how the world talks. Mr. Watson, come here. I want to see you. Alexander Graham Bell spoke those words on March 10th, 1876, and changed the world. The request made 150 years ago marked the first message successfully transmitted through Bell's new invention. In the next room in his Boston laboratory, Bell's assistant heard the now famous words crackle through the receiver. The age of the telephone had just begun. In a way, Bell's inspiration for the revolutionary invention started when he was a child growing up in Edinburgh, Scotland, where his family was obsessed with speech. His father developed a system called visible speech to help the deaf learn to talk. Bell ended up teaching the system at a deaf school in Boston after the family emigrated first to Canada, then to the United States. On the side of the young scientist became fascinated with how sound travels and worked to create a harmonic telegraph. At the time, inventors from around the world were racing to improve the telegraph. which was developed in the 1830s to transmit coded messages over wires. But Bell's idea was bigger. What if you could send a human voice over the wire? Bell started making major advances on his invention after joining Thomas Watson, an experienced electrical designer and mechanic who became his dedicated assistant. The breakthrough came when Watson accidentally plucked a metal reed they had attached to the wire. On the other end, Bell could hear the reed's overtones that would be necessary for transmitting speech. 8 months later, Bell received his patent for the method of and apparatus for transmitting vocal or other sounds telegraphically. 3 days after that, Watson heard the first words ever spoken over the telephone. Initial public reaction to the new device ranged from awe to skepticism. After hearing a demonstration at the 1876 Centennial Exhibition in Philadelphia, Brazil's emperor reportedly exclaimed, "My God, it talks." Even Queen Victoria reported the process to be quite extraordinary, but said the sound was rather faint after Bell demonstrated the device. Still, many people doubted the device's practicality and asked why anyone would need to speak to someone miles away when a telegram would do. That sentiment quickly changed in 1877 after Bell's telephone company, today known as AT&T, began installing telephones in homes and businesses. By 1880, about 49,000 phones were in across the United States. Within years, the telephone had morphed from scientific novelty to public necessity. But in 150 years later, questions still remain about who truly invented the world-changing device. Another inventor, Elisha Gray, filed for a telephone patent the same day as Bell, using a different technique and transmitting sound waves. Gray later accused Bell of stealing the idea described in his patent. The controversy led to multiple lawsuits over the following years, but the courts ultimately upheld Bell's patent rights. Today, he is widely credited as the inventor of the telephone, though historians continue to debate the details of the case. You have been listening to a reading of articles and features from the current issues of the Lockport Union-Sun Journal. We read from the Lockport Union-Sun Journal every Saturday at 5 p.m. Your reader has been P. Fitz. Thank you for listening.
Coming up next in the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, we have a reading of the Wall Street Journal Off-Duty section. At 7 o'clock, we got Harper's Magazine, and at 8 o'clock, we have Sports Illustrated. Stay tuned for these readings and more throughout the day. You're listening to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Radio readers broadcast daily readings 24 hours a day of newspapers, magazines, and books to area people who are blind or have a print disability who are provided reading radios. Our broadcast signal is provided at no charge by WNED. Radio reading broadcasts throughout the city of Buffalo, Western New York, and Southern Ontario's Niagara Peninsula. For more information on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, call us at 716-821-5555. following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability, which makes